I'm Kelly Durham, and this is Lecture 1 of World War II in Memory. Memory is dynamic, and in this course we'll take a look at how the memories of World War II continue to evolve. We'll do that by taking a look at the national memories of some of the war's major participants to see how those memories have been collected and shaped and how they continue to influence national identities today. Memory is rooted in individual experiences. Things happen to us, and our recollection of those events become our memories. World War II veteran and essayist Paul Fussell wrote that our personal experiences, and therefore our memories, vary based on time and space. In his essay, Thank God for the Atom Bomb, Fussell points out that one's responses to atomic bombs were heavily influenced by how far away, both in time and distance, one was from the action. He writes that the response, and therefore memory, of a Marine or infantryman in the Pacific Theater was a whole lot different than that of, for example, an historian considering the event from thousands of miles and dozens of years away. Fussell is writing about individual memories. Of course, none of us has individual memories of the events of World War II, so instead we rely on history. But what is history really? Well, it starts with individual memories like the ones Fussell refers to. Through social interactions, these individual memories are assembled into a framework of collective memories. We'll talk more about that and how that happens in a minute. Collective memories then become the basis for national memories. National memories help create order out of chaotic events. They help simplify the story, turning it into a narrative that can be commonly understood, and this narrative also needs to serve the needs of the state. These needs may be influenced by politics, geopolitics, economics, and other factors. And during this course, we'll take a look at how some of those factors impact the various national narratives. National memories then take on the qualities of myth. And by that I mean a story that is traditional or widely believed. We often view myths as fictitious, but that's not necessarily the case. National myths have some basis in fact. They usually begin as collections of individual memories that have been reinterpreted to support the needs of the state. So how do we get from individual to national? Well, to do that we rely on people like writers and historians, architects, curators, filmmakers, and so forth, people who control what we might call the memory-making apparatuses. These are things like textbooks, narrative works of history, war memorials, commemorations, films, museums, and so forth. In a free society like ours, practically anyone can participate in collecting memories. Control of the narrative is different in authoritarian states, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. Now, one of your assignments for this week is to listen to the oral history of T. Moffett Burris. This is one of more than 10,000 oral histories collected by the National World War II Museum. Burris was a company commander in the 82nd Airborne Division, participating in several major campaigns, including Operation Market Garden in Holland in September 1944. In the assigned clip, Burris tells about the assault river crossing of the Wall River in order to seize the Nijmegen Bridge. Burris tells what he saw, what he felt, what he heard. This is an example of individual memory. Now, of course, there were hundreds of others who participated in this river crossing as well, and the author Cornelius Ryan included dozens of their memories in his book, A Bridge Too Far, and that became the memory-making apparatus that we talked about earlier. Of course, there's another step to this story as well, because from Ryan's book, filmmaker Richard Attenborough directed a movie by the same name. Now, rather than ask you to watch the whole movie, it's very long, I've asked you to focus on one 11-minute clip. The clip is the filmmaker's representation of the river crossing described individually by Burris and collectively by Ryan. For those of us who weren't there, for those who haven't read the book, the film version of the event becomes the national memory. It replaces reality. It becomes the myth. The film version simplifies a chaotic, tragic, and heroic story, making it comprehensible to those of us without first-hand experience and memory. I mentioned that national narratives serve the needs of the state, and that's certainly the case in this example. The bravery of the U.S. paratroopers reinforces the image of a heroic, selfless, sacrificial effort by the United States to liberate Western Europe during World War II. This reinforces the prevalent American perception that we were the good guys. And that belief lent legitimacy to the United States as it exercised its superpower in the post-war world. We were able to do this because of the image that we were acting altruistically, not only to preserve democracy and freedom in our country, but in other countries as well. That's the simple, usable story that emerges. That's the myth. But when that myth is challenged, people get very uncomfortable. And we'll talk more about that in week 7. Now, earlier I mentioned national narratives in an authoritarian state. In the Soviet Union, what's now Russia, the narrative was much more rigidly controlled. In the immediate post-war period, Stalin wanted no alternate versions of the Soviet war experience, so he prohibited the publication of the memoirs of his top commanders, and he even banned organized veterans groups. The official narrative that emerged ignored the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact. It ignored the Soviet invasion of Poland. It ignored the disastrous early days of the war, which resulted in incredible suffering for the Soviet people. Instead, the national narrative championed the heroic performance of Stalin, the indispensable leader whose wisdom and tenacity saved the nation from fascist invaders. This is another myth that obscures the more uncomfortable aspects of the story. But we're talking about a time in history when the average individual had virtually no access to any other sources of information aside from the official party, state-controlled media of the Soviet Union. We'll review the Soviet myth of the Great Patriotic War in more detail in week number 3. Today, of course, we live in an age in which anybody with a smartphone can upload information and images to the internet and make them globally and immediately accessible. That allows ordinary folks like us to participate in this memory-making process. And this has given rise to what Levy and Schneider call cosmopolitan memory. They define cosmopolitanism as a process through which global concerns become part of the local experience of an increasing number of people across national boundaries. Levy and Schneider concentrate on how different cultures on different continents have embraced the Holocaust, transferring that from a distinctly Jewish collective memory into a supranational ideal of good and evil. And we've seen similar efforts with respect to the issue of comfort women in East Asia. This issue has expanded from a parochial Chinese or Korean concern and has been adopted internationally to represent the plight of women and, in a larger sense, other marginalized individuals as well. These cosmopolitan memories at times challenge national memories, even leading to geopolitical controversies, as we'll see when we talk about Japan and China in week number 5. Okay, so today we talked about individual memories, those that are based on personal experiences, and how those are assembled through social interactions into collective memories. We also talked about how national memories are built on that collective foundation. We also talked about national memories serve the needs of the state. And in addition, we discussed cosmopolitan memories, which are those which transcend national borders and give voice to underrepresented or marginalized individuals. Now, next week, we're going to take a look at the evolution of Germany's national memory of World War II and how it has influenced that country's identity and post-war relations.